Why do I continue to record videos at 2 AM in the morning? Hello everybody, it's me, the Nemesis Bloodreich, the Riker of the Nemesis. That's me. One day I got together with two really cool people I know on a server, one of which is definitely human and their name very much reflects that, and the other one is a cool British monarch of indeterminate maturity who probably knows more about stuff than I do because he's quite smart. We got together with a bunch of self-made prompts for ideas. That was a very bad way to explain it. Let me try that again. We got together with a bunch of prompts that we came up with so that we could figure out matches that were completely unorthodox. We took mediums not often used in versus debating, such as music or ARGs, and abstract concepts like puzzles and riddles, and came up with some matchups where the characters in the battle originate from those mediums or concepts. All of these thumbnails were made by the human, by the way, and I couldn't have done this without his help, or, well, either of their help. They're both really cool, and if they're watching this, thank you again. Music. For the medium of music, there were honestly quite a lot of choices, and while I was personally an advocate of Set Abominate from Iced Earth Something Wicked Saga versus either Eddie the Head from Iron Maiden, or Kanada Heinz from Sodom, or even a battle as simple as Hector from Hammerfall versus the Warrior from Manowar, I was a bit late to the party on this one, and it was already decided that we would have Starman from Rush versus Pink Floyd's Division Bell. I admittedly don't really know much about either in terms of the characters that are represented here, but they look kind of interesting in the thumbnail, and the more I look at this script, the more I realize that some of these will have very little to talk about. Visual art, a form of art which is completely visual. I actually just explained that in the least useful way possible. For this, we had Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa versus Pablo Picasso's Weeping Woman. They are both women, and they have both been drawn. Though you could argue the underlying matchup here is actually Lisa Gherardini versus Dora Maar, as they are the women of which Da Vinci and Picasso based their art on. What more can I say? Theatre, performing arts that portray narratives live to an audience. For this one we originally had the Phantom of the Opera as one of the combatants, but we are also really stupid and forgot that the Phantom originates from a 1909 French novel by Gaston Leroux. So we instead settled on, and I used that term very loosely as the British one. I hope they don't mind me referring to them as such. Just threw this one at the human at literally the last second, but it actually kind of works. William Shakespeare's Hamlet from The Tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, versus Arthur Miller's William Loman from The Death of a Salesman. These are two characters who are the centerpiece of iconic tragedy plays. William Loman, by the way, is the salesman in Death of a Salesman. It's all about like the waning, the days leading up to the death of a salesman who's just, everything's fucked. You could technically feat search this one and decide a winner if you want to, but I mean, come on. Musicals, you know what the fuck they are. We had plenty of choices, but for some reason settled on Alexander Hamilton from the 2015 musical Hamilton, an American Musical, versus Jesus Christ Superstar from the 1970 rock opera of the same name. You just take a guy everyone knows, a founding father of the Americas, and Jesus Christ, and make them musical protagonists. I'll give it this, it got me to chuckle, and I'm very glad that this thumbnail exists now. Dance. I don't know how to describe this one, it's just dancing. We did the White Swan versus Sugar Plum Fairy, and honestly I know nothing about dance, so to me, this looks like just two women who are trying to do a dab based purely on a blind man's description of what a dab is while having never actually seen one in their lifetimes. Newspaper strips. This one certainly had a lot of options, though by options I mean characters that could be used and not characters that actually work together. I actually really wanted to find an opponent for Hugo Hercules, a 1902 character believed to have inspired Hugo Danner from the 1930 Gladiator, who is then believed to have inspired the character of Superman from 1938. And of course, I would be a bad friend if I didn't mention Jim Davis's Garfield was certainly on the table as well. If you know why I would be a bad friend to not mention him, then cool. However, we eventually just settled on the simple but effective Dennis the Menace versus Dennis the Menace, two identically named and similar in concept teenage troublemakers who are part of what's arguably one of the most iconic examples of two identical ideas that were not rip-offs of one another, with Hank Ketcham's US strip debuting on the 12th of March 1951, and George Muir and David Law's UK strip debuting on sale on the 12th of March 1951. Technically, the UK one went into syndication on, I believe, March 17th or 15th, one of those two, but it was first available on sale on March 12th, the same day exactly as the US strip. Both nowadays have changed their names in their ongoing runs, they're both still going. The US one is now being known as Dennis the Fool, and the UK one is being known as Dennis and Nasher, neither of which are as catchy as Dennis the Menace to me. You could legitimately debate this one as a fight, but I'm not going to feat search 70 years worth of comic strips for a video. That's probably not going to be as long as the time it would take just to read those. Young children's literature, a genre of stories designed explicitly for children of young ages. For this one, we've got one that's probably not the most fair matchup here. Clifford the Big Red Dog versus Harry McClary from Donaldson's Dairy. They are friendly dogs who are cute. Unfortunately, Clifford's the size of a building, so it's not really going to go well for poor Harry, I don't think. I say that, but imagine if there's like a feat where Harry McClary destroys the planet. That'd be ridiculous. I did suggest Clifford versus the BFG to be a more fair matchup, but I got ignored. Radio dramas. This one I remember taking a while to come up with, simply because radio drama originals aren't exactly a very commonly discussed topic. Like, the most popular radio drama is War of the Worlds, which is not originally a radio drama. But we managed to come up with 1938's Captain Midnight versus 1946's Special Agent Dick Barton, two radio serials which got adapted into various films and other mediums. You can honestly research this one if you want to as well, but I'm willing to bet that those 70 years of radio drama stuff have all been lost. Well, not all, but most. Oh goody, all of my audio got corrupted! Past that point, but I guess now it means I don't have to record at 2 AM, I can just record at a time where I can actually speak in proper volume. Sorry for the whole boring opening to the video. Advertisements. Now we could have gone with Kool-Aid Man vs Pepsi Man, watch the Not Death battle, you know. Or I guess even Kool-Aid Man vs Macho Man Randy Savage, but we wanted to do something a bit more original, so what else would we do but Mr. Clean versus the Toilet Duck? Two surprisingly buff people who clean things and will do whatever it takes to clean. Unfortunately, Mr. Clean grabbed the sun, so he probably wins, but I don't know if anyone has feat searched fucking Toilet Duck. I would love if someone has, because that sounds amazing. Mythology. This one had a lot of options, especially to me, someone who's really into mythology and folklore and stuff. Originally we had Hercules versus Maui, but we thought it was too normal. And then some of the ones I suggested that nobody knew the characters to were Cuchulainn versus the Crown Prince Nezar, Siegfried versus Sigurd, Jormungandr versus the Rainbow Serpent, Grendel versus Fafnir. You know, none of those happened though. Finally, I did manage to convince them of one matchup, or, well, I mean, damn, I say just one of them was the only one who actually cared enough. I was like, I don't know these. Anyway, I managed to convince them of the Norwegian Surtur versus the Greek Typhon, two giants of calamity who battle the most powerful gods and bring fear to the rest of the pantheon. I think it would actually be pretty cool to just see this as like a 3D animation. Maybe someone's done it, I don't know. But researching it would be probably quite difficult. I think with Surtur, he hasn't got much. Like, he was in the Poetic Epica, I think it's called, but not much else. But there would be scaling, of course. And, you know, it's just a cool matchup. Fairy tales, you know what they are, and we have Little Red Riding Hood versus Goldilocks, because they're cautionary tales where in some tellings the little girl gets fucking vored because animals are cruel. Honestly, this battle is kind of cruel as an idea, because it's literally, let's just make two little girls beat each other to death. Nursery rhymes, quite similar in concept to fairy tales and children's literature, but told in rhyme, as the name suggests. Because we can't think of anything terribly creative, we have Humpty Dumpty versus the Itsy Bitsy Spider. You know, because both are characters who fall from heights, but, you know, the spider climbs back up like an idiot while Humpty Dumpty dies. A guy who dies versus someone who keeps trying to get themselves killed by the fact that they keep climbing up when obviously it's not a good idea. Folklore. Different to mythology in that mythology is a subgenre of folklore technically, but, you know, the distinction's all wacky. For this one, we came up with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table versus Charlemagne and the Paladins of Charlemagne. Now, I'm aware that there are, like Charles the Great was a real person, and there are people who believe King Arthur was real too. His historical existence is questioned, but this is specifically the folklore versions of them, the ones in the stories and tales told. The folklorish interpretation of Charles Magnus, the King of the Franks, and his 12 paladins, Roland, Oliver, Fierabras, Astolfo, Ogier the Dane, Ganelon, Rinaldo, Malagigi, Florismart, Guy de Bourgogne, Naimon, Otuel, and the Duke of Bavaria. There are other paladins depending on the interpretation of the story. Some of these are often not paladins as well. For any of my viewers who are like Fate Stay Night fans, you should know that Bradamante was not actually a paladin of Charlemagne. Bradamante appeared in the Orlando Innamorato and Orlando Furioso. However, she's not really depicted as a paladin in those, to my knowledge. I don't remember her being called a paladin. So she's not technically a paladin of Charlemagne in the stories. And their opponents are obviously King Arthur, a British folk hero of unknown historical legitimacy who is a key figure in the matter of Britain, and his Knights of the Round Table, of which you generally select 12 to go against the 12 paladins. though the most notable of the Knights of the Round Table to me are Sir Agravain, Sir Bedivere, Sir Accolon, Sir Cador, Sir Caligranat, Sir Caradoc, Constantine III of Britain, Sir Ector, Sir Dagonet, Sir Galahad, Sir Gawain, Sir Gaheris, Sir Firafis, Sir Gareth, Sir Kay, Sir Mordred, Sir Palamedes, Sir Malignant, Sir Percival, Sir Tristan, Sir Yvain, Sir Urien, and of course, Sir Lancelot. I've spent enough time on this one. Urban Legends. Now, for this one, we're explicitly not including Creepypasta. Those are, they're not on this. Creepypasta are talked about a lot in Versus, actually. Anyway, Urban Legends, more modern forms of folklore. Not one for originality, we went with Bloody Mary versus the Kuchisake Onna. Now, these are both crazy killer ladies, and actually, CryptoZing, which is another series, has done an episode on this, and I would recommend going to check it out. If you don't know who they are, somehow, Bloody Mary is a legend of a ghost who will appear in the mirror when her name is chanted multiple times, generally nowadays either 3 or 13. Originally, her story was that she would show a woman her future husband when summoned in the mirror, or a skull if they were going to die before marriage. Nowadays, she just fucking kills you. Now, for some reason, we didn't put her against her Japanese equivalent, Torie no Hanako-san, which is a spirit that haunts Japanese school bathrooms, because, of course, Japan would make it haunt a shitter that underage people use. That's classic Japan mode. What will happen is that if you knock on a stall in the girl's bathroom 3 times and ask if she's there, you fucking die. Or you don't, and you just see her in the mirrors of the bathroom, and she's like, yeah, I'm here. Weird? Why? I don't get it. And, even if she's not there, you just look like an idiot if you're, a man who's walked into the girl's bathroom just to find out if there's a fucking ghost there. Instead, we put her up against the Kuchisake Onna, which is the famous slit-mouthed woman who waltzes up to you, asks if she's hot, and kills you if you say no. If you say yes, she'll show off her slit mouth, and she'll ask you if she's hot again. If you say no, she'll still kill you, and if you say yes, she'll give you the same slit mouth, which sometimes will kill you anyway. Though you can apparently distract her by just saying, you're average, or just throwing shit at her until she's distracted. So not only is she an irrational murderer, she's also an idiot. Cryptids, animals or beings of disputed existence, like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. And of course, we went with the Mothman versus the Flatwoods Monster. These are 2 entities people claim have appeared during the occurrence of strange events, who have glowing red eyes and are able to traverse through the skies. Both have also been explained by experts as actually having been barn owls in specific lighting conditions that were, misinterpreted as the Mothman and Flatwoods Monster. I actually really like the thumbnail for this one that was made. This looks cool. ARGs, also known as alternate reality games, are interactive stories told on the internet, often updated in real time and using social media to roleplay as if the events in the story are really happening. They're also generally not as fun after they've concluded and you're watching it in the past. They're most fun when you're there in the moment. For this one, we posited that we weren't allowed to use a version of Slender Man. So no Operator from Marble Hornets versus Slenderman from Everyman Hybrid, or a Battle Royale involving those two along with the Tribe 12 Slenderman and the Angel Game Slenderman. Instead, we did Poppy versus Dad, 2 seemingly innocuous YouTube ARGs where there's many disturbing implications involving our protagonists who are robotic in how they act, and many questions are posited about their origins and nature. Honestly, I'm just glad the Chad Dad got to be on my channel because I don't know how else I would bring him up. I feel like you could actually make an argument for either one winning this, but you'd want to wait till the ARG's over, which I don't think they are, but I haven't really kept up. Board games. Pretty simple concept to grasp. They're video games, but they're analog, and you need actual friends to play with. So, I'm pretty sure most of my fan base have never played a board game, because I sure haven't. We've got here Chess versus Battleship. Now yes, Chess versus Checkers is the legacy match, but you can just do Checkers versus Sternhalma, or as it's colloquially known, Chinese Checkers, which is kind of a racist name considering it originated in Germany and has no relation to China at all. Anyway, so this is a battle of board games that revolve around trying to eliminate the physical representations of classes in an army through strategy, planning ahead, and logic. And they're also very mathematical in nature. I'm not sure if you could come up with an actual answer for who wins, but then again, the battleships do include a full-blown destroyer, so yeah, okay, the battleships probably win. Pen and paper games. These are games that can be played as long as one has an implement of writing and a compatible surface. Think if you had a texter and also your hand. Think a game like Tic-Tac-Toe or Pictionary, or in this case, Hangman and his opponent, Bulls and cows. Hangman is of course the ever popular game where someone writes a bunch of empty spaces indicating the letters of a word, and people have to guess letters that they think could be in the word and get the word right before the person who came up with the word draws a man being hung, which he will slowly add pieces to with every letter guessed that's not part of the word. Bulls and Cows is another codebreaker type of game, where the two people write a 4-digit number, with each digit being different, and they have to guess the other person's number. When the person guesses, their opponent has to tell them how many bulls and cows they got. A bull is when the person guessing got a number right and also in the correct position, and a cow is when the person guessing got a number right but in the wrong position. The first person to guess the number right wins, and explaining these games as badly as possible is really the most I can say about this matchup. Puzzles. Here we get into some of the more abstract ideas, and honestly the ones that I probably like the most, outside of like Serta versus Typhon. These are logic puzzles, problems posited that test one's ability to work out the logic behind the problem, but the problems do have actual answers. We here have the prisoners versus the officers. Let me explain. The prisoners come from an induction puzzle. You have 4 prisoners who have been arrested for a crime, and they're taken to a jail that doesn't have any space for them. So the jailer gives them a puzzle, and if they succeed, they all go 3, and if they fail, they get shot. He puts 3 of the prisoners in a line. The first one is looking at a wall, the second one sees the first one, and the third one sees the 2 in front of him. The 4th person, however, is placed into a separate room that nobody can see, and he can't see anybody. They are all given party hats. 2 of the hats are white and 2 of them are black. The first prisoner in the line and the prisoner in the other room can't see any other hats. The person in the middle of the line can only see the hat of the person in front of him, and the person in the back of the line can only see the hats of the 2 people in front of him. They are told to guess what color hat they have. They cannot communicate with each other, and if any prisoner says with 100% certainty, with no guessing, what color hat he has, then that counts as the one guess they get. If that prisoner gets it right, they all go free, and if he gets it wrong, they all die. So the question is, how do they escape? Now the solution would be that the prisoner at the back of the line, who can see the 2 people in front of him, gets 2 possibilities. If the 2 people in front of him have the same color hat, then he knows that his color is different to theirs. If they have 2 black hats, he knows the other 2 hats are white, so he has a white hat. However, if the 2 people in front of him have different color hats, he cannot say which color he has. The key here is that the person in the middle of the line, who can only see the person in front of him, needs to give the person at the back of the line enough time. If the person at the back of the line does not say anything after long enough, then the person in the middle of the line can determine that his hat is a different color to the person at the front of the line and correctly guess the color. The issue here is that the solution to this assumes that all 4 prisoners understand the problem and are rational enough to think of this solution. There's also a question of if the person at the back of the line saying nothing violates the no communication rule. Communication is generally considered the transferal of knowledge, and while the person at the back didn't say anything, him saying nothing transferred knowledge to the person in the middle. Because he said nothing, the person in the middle knows that his hat is a different color to the person in front of him. And if you say that the prisoner saying nothing counts as breaking the no communication rule, then the puzzle is impossible to solve. Now what's interesting is that this is just the 2-hat variant. There's also a variant where there are 3 prisoners with 3 hats, as well as a 4-person, 5-person, 10-person, even a countably infinite person one. The officers, meanwhile, are attested to come from Catherine the Great's 36 officer problem. Imagine you have a 6x6 grid and you have 36 officers, 1 for each spot on the grid. Each officer has 1 of 6 ranks and 1 of 6 regiments, but no officer has the same combination. If an officer has rank 1 and regiment 1, then everyone else with rank 1 cannot have regiment 1, and anyone else in the first regiment has to be a different rank. Now you have to organize them onto the grid so that each row and each column is composed of 6 officers with both different ranks and different regiments. No row can have a person with an identical rank to another in the row, and same goes with regiments. The interesting thing here is that this variant of the puzzle, the 36 officer one, is completely impossible to solve. However, there are variants where there are only 16 officers on a 4x4 grid, which are possible to solve. Jokes! This one's fucking stupid. The guy that walks into the bar versus the guy that knocks on the door. You know, knock knock jokes versus some guys walking to a bar jokes. I mean, like... yeah, you know. Riddles! Complex problems that don't necessarily work as logic puzzles like what we had before, but rather use double meanings or trickery in the way the phrase is written that require either a less than or more than literal interpretation of the question to figure out the answer. Here we have the man from St. Ives versus the mother doctor. These two riddles go as such. As I was going to St. Ives, I met a man with 7 wives. Each wife had 7 sacks, each sack had 7 cats, each cat had 7 kits. Kits, sacks, cats, and wives, how many were going to St. Ives? The riddle misleads you by giving you excess information, as the only information necessary to solve the question is the first and last sentence. However, because of the amount of information in the middle, it is generally meant to mislead you by making you assume that the opening is not important and is just setting up the scene. This wants you to guess either 8 or 9, or combining and multiplying each thing by 7 to figure out the total number, which would be like, I think in the 2000s. However, in actuality, the answer is 1, as the question is deceptively simple. The start of the riddle is as I was going to St. Ives, meaning only one person for sure can be stated to be going to St. Ives. Now, it is plausible that the man with 7 wives was going to St. Ives as well, as it doesn't make a statement of where he was or where he's going to. However, that would be assuming something we have no evidence to suggest. The man from St. Ives could have been coming from St. Ives, could have been going to St. Ives, or could have just been living somewhere between the man and St. Ives. So the only concrete answer you can give is 1. The mother doctor meanwhile comes from a riddle that goes as such. A father and a son are in a car accident where the father is killed. The son is brought to a hospital and needs immediate treatment. The doctor they bring in says, "I cannot work on him, he is my son." Who is the doctor? Now obviously the answer is the mother of the child, or potentially just whoever the other parental guardian is. This riddle is also deceptively simple, and misleading. By explicitly saying the father is killed, the reader is meant to be misled into confusion as to how the father could also be the child's parent if he died. However, the riddle makes no claim on who the doctor is beyond being a parent of the child. It also only uses pronouns that refer to males, and nothing referring to a female is in the riddle. So it's just meant to mislead you, which is what a riddle does. Paradoxes. Paradoxes are generally self-contradictory statements, though explaining all the different types is difficult, so let's just go with self-contradictory statements. For this we have the barber versus the grandchild. The barber comes from the barber paradox. The paradox states that in a village there is only one barber. The barber's rule is that he shaves all, and only shaves men that do not shave themselves. So, does the barber shave himself? If the barber does not shave himself, that would make him a man that doesn't shave himself. This means he has to shave himself because the barber's rule is that he shaves all men that do not shave themselves, which he now is. However, if he does shave himself, that means he is a man that shaves himself, which means that the rule of only shaving men that don't shave themselves now is afflicting him. He cannot shave himself because he's just become a man who does shave himself. And that just goes in a loop, a self-contradictory situation. The grandchild is from the grandfather paradox. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather before he can fuck your grandmother and make your daddy, then that means your dad never existed. And as a result, you never existed. However, as a result of that, you never went back in time to kill your grandfather, so your grandfather does exist. And as such, he does have your father, and you do exist, so you do go back in time, and it just keeps going in a cycle like that. Both of these are cyclical situations. Honestly, as a fight, this doesn't really make sense, though I say that for a lot of these, to be honest. But the grandchild is perpetually existing and not existing in a continuous cycle ad infinitum. Whereas the barber, it's only his status as a man that does not shave himself that is in flux. So the barber wins. And finally, what is arguably one of my favorites of these, thought experiments. A hypothetical situation where a setup is hypothesized for the sake of thinking about the consequences. I really like thought experiments, it just gets your brain working, you know? In this case, we have Schrodinger's cat versus Maxwell's demon, 2 thought experiments revolving around 2 states of being. Schrodinger's cat is a hypothetical experiment meant to discuss how something can be 2 contradictory things at the same time, due to the state of it being one of those things being linked to a random event the observer cannot see. Imagine you have a cat in a box. You cannot see what's going on in the box, you cannot hear any sounds from the box, and the box is completely stationary regardless of what happens within it. With that cat, you've put in a bomb. This bomb contains poison that at complete random, without any way to indicate when it will happen, can go off and kill the cat. At the same time, after an unknown amount of time, the poison could decay and stop being deadly, meaning that when it gets released, it does not affect the cat. Once you put those 2 things in the box and close the box, that cat is simultaneously dead and alive. You do not know when the device will go off, and you cannot predict it. You cannot predict when the poison will decay either. So, as a result, because you do not know, that cat is simultaneously two contradictory things because you cannot prove either or. Obviously, once you open the box, you'll be able to tell, but until then it is both simultaneously, causing a paradox without actually being one. As obviously the cat has to be one or the other, but you cannot prove which one it is. So scientifically, it's neither and both. Maxwell's demon, meanwhile, is an experiment meant to discuss how the second law of thermodynamics may be violated. The second law of thermodynamics states, in all energy exchanges, if no energy enters or leaves the system, the potential energy of the state will always be less than that of the initial. To put this in a simple way you can understand, imagine you are in a situation where you have 100 points of energy. There is no way to restore that energy, and every time you take an action, it costs points to do that action. As a result, every time you do something, your total energy decreases, increasing the amount of entropy. This law is actually why the heat death of the universe is an eventuality. The amount of energy will eventually be used up and everything will become thermal energy, as every action causes a thermal reaction, you could say. Maxwell's demon is a hypothetical way to violate that law. Imagine you have a box, and there's two compartments in the box and a door between them. There are two types of molecules in this box, ones that move fast and ones that move slow. What the demon will do is that whenever a type of molecule approaches the door, the demon will open and shut the door so fast that only the fast molecules can pass into one side and only the slow molecules can pass into the other. In doing so, the demon has managed to separate the box into two sides, one of which will increase in temperature as fast molecules are hotter, which will increase the amount of energy in that compartment, which thus violates the law. No energy has been introduced to the overall system, but the amount of entropy has been decreased. One of the unique things about this fight, however, is that there is a guaranteed winner. The demon will inevitably open the box where the cat is stored. The cat will either be dead, which automatically is a demon win, or will be alive and the demon will be able to kill it by just being faster than is physically possible. And that was the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I sure enjoyed making it and coming up with these ideas. Once again, thank you to my friends Hugh Man and Kingsley, yes, I'm using their actual names this time, for coming up with ideas and in the former's case, making the thumbnails. Hope you guys all have a wonderful day. How else do I end these videos? I don't like telling people to like, comment, and subscribe. It feels like an obvious thing to do. Have a good one.